stories for bedtime.
And car time.
And playtime.
And anytime you want to hear how much Jesus loves you in all this world.
Even little birds.
Hi, I'm Pastor Sarah at St. Paul Lutheran Church in Davenport, Iowa. Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to you. Welcome to this podcast where we tell stories told just for kids and kids at heart. Every week we will tell a story about Jesus from the Bible. And for these stories on this podcast, we need to bring our imaginations. We are going to imagine that there was a little bird in all of those Bible stories, a little bird who was friends with Jesus, a little bird who saw the stuff Jesus did and heard the things Jesus said. Last week, we talked about that very first Christmas when baby Jesus was born in a stable with a little bird close by, surrounded by animals and those shepherds who visited. Well, our story today continues in that stable when some more people and animals come to meet baby Jesus. Here is episode 5.
Little Bird and the Wise Men.
In the days after baby Jesus was born, the stable in Bethlehem was a safe and cozy sort of nest. Mary and Joseph took care of baby Jesus, who slept a whole lot, like babies do. Everyone did what they could to help. The cow would share her milk, the chickens their eggs. Kind people from Bethlehem would come by with clothing and care and more food. Little Bird loved that every one of them had their own special gifts to give baby Jesus. Even Little Bird, who gave the baby Jesus the sweet gift of music, singing gentle lullabies to help him sleep. But all that coziness changed one morning when the most astounding visitors arrived. These visitors were like no other people Little Bird had ever seen. The 3 men wore fancy and colorful robes, luxurious and textured, deep purple and bright red and orange. They even wore glittering jewelry. They spoke with accents that Little Bird could barely understand. These fancy and unfamiliar people scared her, so she flew to the corner of the stable and hid in a pile of hay. Buried in that hay, Little Bird felt safe. She decided she'd hide there until the strange people left. But soon, she felt something eating the hay around her. A huge, slobbery tongue nearly licked her. Little Bird hopped out of the hay just before she got chomped, and she came face to face with the strangest animal she had ever seen. It looked sort of like a horse, but bigger, a lot bigger, with a long face, and on its back were these 2 big, hairy humps. Little Bird jumped with shock and fear, and when Little Bird jumped, the big humped animal stepped back, a little terrified too. But when he saw Little Bird, he smiled and almost laughed in relief. He said, "I thought you were a mouse. I'm terrified of mice." Little Bird looked at his face and saw the biggest eyelashes she had ever seen, and he had the kindest brown eyes. She knew she didn't have to be afraid of this enormous, strange creature. And so Little Bird laughed too and said,
I'm just a sparrow, nothing to be frightened of. But what are you? I've never seen a creature as big as you.
I'm a camel, he said. We've been on a long journey. That's what us camels are good for, walking a long way. But I'm tired. I am so grateful we finally found that baby king." Little Bird was so curious. How did they even know about baby Jesus? And how did they find out he was here of all places? This was a long time before the internet, or newspapers, or telephones, or even letters. And what did he mean that baby Jesus was a king? Camel told Little Bird that the humans who took care of him studied the stars. They were called wise men, or magi. They saw a star in the sky they'd never seen before, and they knew that the star was telling them that a king was born. So Camel carried them for miles and miles, following the star. A new star? Little Bird could hardly believe it. God just kept doing amazing things. Camel then told Little Bird that they first went to the palace where King Herod lives. They figured that if a king was born, he'd surely be born in the big city Jerusalem, in a palace where the royal people live. But the baby wasn't there. It was just that mean ruler named King Herod. Herod was a jealous and greedy king who wanted all of the power for himself. King Herod was suddenly very worried about a new baby who might just try to take his crown and all of his stuff. Little Bird shivered at this thought. King Herod was known by people and animals for his cruelty. The camel described how they followed that star all the way to Nazareth and eventually to the little stable. Totally different from a palace. It was not at all the place they'd expected to find the new king. But then, just as Camel was telling all about this amazing star, he stopped talking and looked over at the wise men. The men in their fancy clothes and their jewels were kneeling right next to the manger, bowing their heads to honor Jesus, just like people kneel before kings. And in that holy moment, Camel lumbered over to where Jesus lay. And then, in the most awkward yet somehow graceful maneuver, Camel bent his front bony legs and kneeled before Jesus too, his knobby knees on the ground. Together, the wise men and Camel quietly paid respect to this little baby, Jesus. Eventually, they all stood up, and the wise men started to rummage through the bags on Camel's back. They pulled out 3 gifts. The first gift was in a soft velvet bag. Mary opened it, and it was full of gold. Little Bird knew this was a gift just right for a king, and Jesus would rule this whole universe someday. The second gift was in a very fancy box, and as soon as Joseph opened the lid, Little Bird could smell the fragrance. It was frankincense made from tree sap, and it smelled just like prayers. People would burn the frankincense at the temple when they prayed, their prayers going up to God like smoke. A gift for a religious leader, perfect for Jesus, the Son of God. And the third gift was a beautiful jar. And when Joseph opened it, Little Bird could see that it was myrrh, an ointment like lotion that was used when someone died. Little Bird didn't quite understand this gift. But someday, years later, when Jesus died on the cross, Little Bird would remember this gift of myrrh and the truth it told of Jesus dying and living again to save the whole world. Mary and Joseph thanked the wise men for these generous gifts. They talked as Camel ate some more hay and rested his tired legs. With little bird cuddled up into the soft fur on his back, she listened to their conversation about the dangerous King Herod who was threatened by baby Jesus and would try to kill him. Mary and Joseph looked worried and held Jesus close. They'd likely need to be on the run, like refugees, to find a safe place soon for Jesus. Little bird relaxed into Camel's warm fur with a sense of assurance. She saw that people were just like animals in the stable, all unique, with their own special gifts to give Jesus. Even though some of those people and animals looked strange and different at first, they all shared the same love of God in their hearts. That's what mattered most. So, with Jesus there with her and the generosity of others, she knew she'd be able to face almost anything. A scary king, or an enormous two-humped animal. Well, kids, what an experience for little bird. I have always wondered what those wise men looked like. Can you draw a picture of them with their fancy clothes? Maybe even a picture of that sweet camel. Those wise men gave some amazing gifts, and so did the animals around Jesus. What would you give if you could give a gift to baby Jesus? Little bird saw that we are all unique, and we all have special gifts and ways that we can help one another. This week, maybe you can be like little bird and explore your particular gifts and talents. Share your gift with others, and maybe even make a new friend along the way, like little bird and camel. A new friend, after all, is a wonderful gift. And that's the end of this episode of Little Bird and Jesus.
Now flap your little wings.
Sing a little song.
And remember that to Jesus,
You will always belong.
Thanks for listening to Little Bird and Jesus, a podcast of St. Paul Lutheran Church in Davenport, Iowa. For more information on St. Paul, visit us at stpaulqc.org. Come visit us again next week as Little Bird continues her journey.